see so many people I know. And there's a lot of people here I don't know either. And Paul and I are, we did send out an email on Sunday, which hopefully you had a chance to look at, just sort of introducing ourselves. And we thought it would be a good idea if we just spent, a minute each just to introduce everyone. Paul, does that sound like a good idea?
It does, yeah.
And
Yeah.
Karen and Paul, I'm going to jump in. So
Sure.
to clarify, the format for this is going to be a little bit different than the general, and that we are going to have a consecutive translation to Spanish, which is going to slow the conversation down a little bit, but I think it's the best way that we can capture the entire conversation on a recording for the public to see. So I'm going to just pause for a moment to let the translator explain that as well.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. Yes, this is Jennifer. I'll be your Spanish interpreter. So yes, the consecutive mode requires that you pause, take short pauses, try not to talk for several minutes at a time. We can do a pretty good job, but the idea is if you could keep your interventions, just keeping that in mind, and then pause for me to give the rendition into Spanish or English as corresponds. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. So what I thought we could do is I could just call on the names as I see them, and you can just do a brief introduction and just tell us your name and the organization you're with. And if there's anything else you want to share quickly, you're welcome to do that as well. So I see Anne-Marie Jensen.
Hi there, my name is Anne-Marie Jensen. I'm the Executive Director of the East County Housing Opportunity Coalition. We are an education, training, and advocacy group working with local governments to try and secure more affordable housing and equitable housing. And I have to step out just for 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I will be right back. I apologize.
That is allowed. Thank you, though, for letting us know. Commissioner Levy, would you like to just say hi real quick?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Don't you want to allow for interpretation after?
Oh, I'm sorry. Should we pause after everything that's said?
Or you could assign me to as a simultaneous interpretation. I see that the mode is on here. I could do it that way to make sure everything goes faster.
I do wish we could do that way, but we,
Nope. Okay.
in order to get it all in one recording.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Then please do remember to pause. Entonces, aquí vamos a empezar con las presentaciones de todos y nada más pueden decir su nombre y la organización que representa. Primero tenemos a Anne-Marie Jensen, que del East County Housing Coalition, y va a salir un minuto que está permitido. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the clarification. Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Claire Levy. I am a Boulder County Commissioner, and I'm the commissioner that's going to be the link between this group and the rest of the commissioners. And I'm very happy to have this opportunity to work on affordable housing. It's something I spent some effort on in my advocacy work in Denver after I left the legislature, and had the privilege of serving on the board of Boulder Housing Partners as well, which was a tremendous learning opportunity for me.
Muchas gracias. Yo soy la comisionada Levy, Claire Levy. Yo soy la enlace entre este grupo de trabajo y los demás comisionados, y es un gran placer participar en ese grupo de accesibilidad a la vivienda. Es algo en que yo trabajé en Denver después de que salí de la legislatura. Entonces, muchas gracias.
Thank you. Anna Fernandez Frank, is there, I can't see if there's another.
No, that's okay. That's my name. My name is Ana Fernandez Frank. I'm here on behalf of EFA, and I'm the Public Policy and Community Outreach Coordinator. Mi nombre es Ana Fernández Frank y estoy aquí representando a EFA y soy la coordinadora de políticas públicas y vínculos comunitarios.
Thank you. So I think that took care of the translation, correct? And then do we want to introduce also support staff? For instance, Sophia, do you want to just say a quick hi?
Hi, I'm Sofia Lerny. I'm here supporting the group and I work in communications for ARPA.
Hola, yo soy Sofía Eleni y yo trabajo en las comunicaciones para ARPA.
Thank you. And then I see Stefka Fanchi. Am I saying that right?
Very close. Stephanie Banshee. And I'm with Elevation Community Land Trust. We are a community land trust that has come to be in just the last 3 years. And we are aiming to be a wide community land trust with already several communities in Boulder County. I am excited to be here to talk a little bit about the importance of planning for accessible and affordable homeownership opportunities.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Yo soy Stefka Fanchi y estoy aquí del Elevation Community Land Trust. Es una organización que se estableció hace unos 3 años apenas. Es un fideicomiso que tiene varios terrenos en la área de Boulder y estoy emocionada de participar en esta conversación sobre accesibilidad y costabilidad de la vivienda.
Great, thank you. Mary Lee Geary.
I'm Mary Lee Geary. I am an administrator at Front Range Community College's Boulder County campus.
Soy Mary Lee Geary, yo soy administradora aquí en el campus de Front Range Community College en Boulder.
Thank you. Ann Tapp.
Hey everyone, I'm Ann Tapp. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director at Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence. We do domestic violence intervention prevention work in Boulder and Brookville counties. So nice to be here.
Yo soy Ann Tapp, estoy aquí de la organización de Alianza para la no violencia, proyecto de Alianza para no violencia y trabajamos también en el condado de Boulder.
Thank you. Laura Scheinbaum, if I'm saying that correctly.
Hey everyone, I'm Laura Scheinbaum. I am the Director of Real Estate Development for Boulder Housing Partners. We are the housing authority for the city of Boulder. And I oversee new construction development, renovation of our existing portfolio, and then purchasing preservation units for affordable, deeply affordable and perpetuity housing in Boulder. So thanks. Nice to be here.
Yo soy Laura Scheinbaum, soy aquí de la directora de desarrollo de bienes raíces. Aquí estamos la autoridad para la ciudad de Boulder y trabajamos con las nuevas construcciones, renovaciones y las compras de unidades para preservación y para la vivienda asequible.
Thank you. Michael Pierce.
Hi, yes, I'm Michael Pierce. I'm a former adjunct faculty at the University of Colorado teaching philosophy, now a leader for the group called Colorado Coalition of Manufactured Homeowners, also on the board of the National Mobile Homeowners Association, and just recently the president of the San Souci Cooperative, a group of residents that just San Souci Mobile Home Park.
Soy ex facultad adjunto aquí en la Universidad de Boulder y estoy actualmente en la mesa para los dueños de casas y trabajo en una cooperativa ahora que trabaja con los dueños de las casas.
Thank you. Kurt Fernhaber.
Good afternoon. So I am the Director of Housing and Human Services for the City of Boulder, but I have two other roles. One is I'm appointed by the County Commissioners as an executive of the Regional Housing Partnership, as well as Homeless Solutions for Boulder County.
Hola, yo soy ahora el director de la vivienda y servicios humanos y tengo también dos otros roles. Estoy en la comisión como en el reglamento de las viviendas y what was your, I'm sorry, can you repeat your second role?
Oops, thank you. Sorry, the Regional Housing Partnership and Homeless Solutions for Boulder County.
La segunda es la Sociedad para Vivienda Regional.
Molly O'Donnell.
Hello, I'm Molly O'Donnell. I'm the Division Director for Housing and Community Investment for the City of Longmont. That includes our affordable housing programs and the work that we're doing with the Longmont Housing Authority. And I also participate on the Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership that Kurt mentioned. And I'm sorry, I'm off camera. I have a stomach bug today.
Yo soy directora de la División de Viviendas aquí en Longmont y trabajamos con la Comisión de Inversiones, también el programa para vivienda asequible y trabajamos con la Autoridad de Vivienda y también la mesa que mencionó.
Thank you. Dave Monji.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dave Hachimonji. I work for Boulder County in our Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience. And my focus has turned to be mainly on lower income energy programming.
Soy Dave Hachimonji y yo trabajo en la oficina del condado de Boulder de sustentabilidad, acción climática y resiliencia. Y yo estoy enfocado en el programa para servicios públicos para personas de bajos ingresos.
I think that's everyone. Is there
question?
any?
Dave, did you say City of Boulder or Boulder
I'm
County?
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Boulder County.
Okay.
So I think we're ready to move on now to the slides again, Paul.
Creo que Paul, ya estamos listos para pasar a la parte de las diapositivas.
Yeah, hopefully you can see the presentation.
Paul, do you want to cover this first slide?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see everyone. Buenas tardes. I'm Paul Janapur. Nice to be here with you all.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Paul Janapur. Me da mucho gusto acompañarlos esta tarde.
So quickly, we wanted to run through just a review of the goals, some of which we covered this morning. So just looking at this slide really quickly.
Vamos a repasar nuestras metas que cubrimos esta mañana. Entonces, solo viendo aquí rápidamente.
In the interest of time, I won't read every one of these points, but I think that hopefully we can all agree that, you know, these points are going to guide our work. These are our goals.
cuestiones de tiempo no voy a estar leyendo todos esos puntos, pero creo que estamos todos de acuerdo que estas metas van a guiar nuestro trabajo.
And I think, just to highlight a couple of things, just again, something, we're looking for work that is transformational, and, trying to strike that balance between long-term transformational change and short-term immediate relief. I think, to me, if we could achieve that would be a great start for any work that we do.
Para resaltar un par de cosas, estamos buscando un equilibrio entre ser transformacional y tener ese equilibrio entre ese cambio transformacional a largo plazo y alivio inmediato a corto plazo para los que están en crisis.
And I think, the real wins for us here would be, doing that while also achieving solutions that are sustainable, that also are able to potentially leverage other funds and existing processes, which I think that's part of the conversation I'm very interested in looking at.
Una de las partes que más me interesa y creo que sería una ganancia es encontrar los programas que serían sostenibles y también para que puedan aprovechar de otros fondos.
And are there any questions or thoughts on any of these goals before we move on to the next slide?
¿Tiene alguna duda o pregunta sobre estas metas antes de seguir?
Okay. Karen, I don't know if you want to run us through this one real quick.
Anne Marie, did you have a question real quick?
No sé si quiere repasar esta diapositiva y si hay una pregunta de Karen.
If you're talking, you must still be on mute.
Sorry. My question with regard to the goals is how we look at what else is being done at the state level. And I mean, Longmont showed that they're doing a lot already. And do we measure our success on the goals? And I guess I just wanted to earmark that we should be thinking about the other things that other jurisdictions or levels of government are also doing, and finding ways of leveraging that so we can do more.
And I think that's something that we all will decide as a group, as we start talking about how we're going to move forward. That's certainly something we are allowed to break up into smaller groups, and there could be a group that goes off and sort of researches and gathers that information and comes back and makes a recommendation to the larger group. We can also be communicating with each other via email in between meetings. So definitely that will be something on our radar.
Y me pregunta en cuanto a las metas, es que si es importante estar viendo lo que están haciendo en otros niveles de gobierno. Vemos que Longmont está haciendo mucho y si estamos midiendo nuestro éxito dependiendo de lo que están haciendo eso y también para aprovechar lo que ellos están haciendo. Sí, definitivamente eso va a ser algo que podemos estar viendo, que podemos en este grupo decidir esto para seguir adelante. Podemos dividirnos en grupos más pequeños, estarnos comunicando por correo, hacer investigaciones y recomendaciones.
Thank you. Paul, did you want to talk about this as well, or I don't mind taking a shot at it, inclusivity and transparency?
Go for it, Karen, thanks.
So something that Paul and I have been talking about and exchanging emails about is how we want to hold this space, and we want it to be inclusive, and we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and that everyone is empowered to do so. And of course, we appreciate any input or feedback that any of the members would like to share with us as we are moving forward as a team. There is quite a list here. And again, I'm not going to read through it. And I think I'm going to pause so the translator can do her work.
Algo que hemos estado platicando, Paul y yo, es cómo podemos asegurarnos que tenemos aquí, creamos un espacio incluyente donde todos pueden alzar sus voces, se sienten empoderados y por supuesto estamos muy abiertos a escuchar sus comentarios y retroalimentación aquí de cómo seguir adelante de esa forma.
And Karen, I would just add quickly, Karen mentioned that the two of us had kind of talked a lot about this, kind of our plan to be inclusive, transparent. A big part of it for us is just being clear about our roles, which I'll pause for translation.
Sí, platicamos mucho sobre nuestro plan para ser incluyentes y transparentes y una parte de eso, gran parte de eso es que somos claros sobre nuestros papeles.
And I think that Karen would join me in wanting to acknowledge that our role is really to be facilitators. We're not here, we're called co-leads, but it's not a role where we're going to be directive or prescriptive. We have no more say than anybody else as far as what comes out of this group. So we want to just assure folks up front that we are here just to guide the process forward and guide the conversation.
Y Karen y yo estamos de acuerdo que nuestro papel es ser facilitadores. Nos llaman colíderes, pero nosotros no tenemos, lo que nosotros decimos no tiene más peso que alguien más. Solamente estamos aquí para guiar el proceso.
And Karen, do you have anything to add here?
Just if anybody has any questions or comments before we move to the next slide.
¿Sí tiene algo que agregar, Karen? No, solamente si hay alguna pregunta o duda antes de seguir.
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, no questions, no hay preguntas. So here on this slide, we just wanted to take a kind of a quick overview, kind of what we were looking at, Karen and I, as far as looking at the phase one work and trying to categorize it in some way. So we came up with these buckets of work here.
Aquí estamos viendo una diapositiva, básicamente es una reseña de lo que Karen y yo estamos viendo y que clasificamos con las principales categorías de trabajo para la fase 1.
And I don't think, we're claiming that this is exhaustive or complete. This, again, is just kind of one vision of major categories of work, kind of with some sub-bullets looking at some of the things that came up in the feedback from phase 1.
Y no pretende ser exhaustivo completo, solo es una lista con algunos también subcategorías de los comentarios que salieron de la fase 1.
And I would just note that on the bottom bullet for promoting equity and accessibility, obviously this bucket will pour into all the other ones, but we wanted to call out a couple of specific bullets here just because those were ones where the feedback was just very much centered on an issue of equity or accessibility.
Y aquí resaltamos mucho ese punto de equidad y accesibilidad porque obviamente esta categoría afecta a todas las otras categorías, pero queríamos resaltar ese mucho porque tuvimos varios comentarios al respecto.
So if we just look briefly, we've got the financial relief assistance for housing. So we've talked a lot about that with rent and utility assistance, property tax assistance, home ownership, middle income assistance.
Y aquí tenemos este alivio financiero, apoyo en la vivienda, hablamos del apoyo para la renta y servicios públicos, ayuda para los impuestos a la propiedad, para tener sus propias casas y apoyo para personas de ingresos medianos.
And before I move on, I'll answer the question in the chat. What is I/DD? And that's intellectual and developmentally disabled.
Y antes de seguir, voy a contestar la pregunta aquí en el chat, que pregunta qué es I diagonal D, y eso es con discapacidad intelectual o de desarrollo.
The second bucket is creating more affordable housing inventory. And we did see quite a few requests from the public and from our elected officials and from others who participated in phase one for workforce housing and innovation in design.
Y aquí tenemos en la segunda categoría, aquí de crear más inventario de viviendas asequibles, y escuchamos mucho tanto del público como los oficiales elegidos para tener más vivienda para la fuerza laboral y diseño innovadora.
A third bucket that we've created has to do with land and building acquisition for affordable housing. And we also saw lots of comments about manufactured homes, mobile homes and parks, as well as land banking.
También la siguiente categoría es la adquisición de tierras para construir viviendas asequibles, y escuchamos muchos comentarios sobre las casas prefabricadas y parques y bancos de tierras.
And then our fourth bucket, creating sustainable, affordable housing. So rehab and repair to existing buildings, leverage funding and build partnerships, trust fund, and expand existing programs.
Y aquí para la cuarta categoría es crear viviendas sostenibles, asequibles, y también parte de eso sería la rehabilitación, reparación, también cómo aprovechar los fondos, crear relaciones colaborativas, también las fideicomisos y expandir los programas existentes.
And then, as Paul said earlier, our last bucket, which is promote equity and accessibility, that will actually pour into all the buckets. So we're talking about racial equity, low income, the potential for immigration and citizenship requirements to be waived. Although I understand from the presentation that that's already been shown that it won't be, Paul, did I get that right? That if immigration status won't be taken into consideration for these programs?
Y aquí en esta última tenemos eso, como mencionó Paul, que afecta a todas las otras categorías de promover equidad de accesibilidad. Y lo que yo entendí con eso, no sé si estoy en lo correcto, Paul, que porque no va a aplicar eso de la estatus migratorio para apoyo a la vivienda, ¿es correcto?
Yes, that's correct, Karen. That's my understanding based on Leslie's description of the ARPA restrictions, so that undocumented assistance would be able to be provided to undocumented populations.
Y eso es mi entendimiento de lo que mencionaron, de que sí se va a poder dar apoyo para sin documentación recuerdo.
And Kurt, you have a question?
¿Una pregunta, Kurt?
I do, thank you. Takes me a minute to get to the mute button. So this is a very helpful list. However, in the previous presentations by the Urban Land Institute, they talked about different land use policies that would be beneficial. And just wondering if that's a role that we're playing in either suggesting or recommending potential land use policies that either are contingent on funding or go along with funding, or in some way encourage different land use policies to be made, if that's a role of this committee.
That's a good question, Kurt, or I'll pause for translation, sorry.
Es una muy buena lista, pero en las presentaciones previas para tierras urbanos, hablamos sobre políticas que serían beneficiosos. No sé si eso es el papel que estamos asumiendo o sugiriendo para recomendar políticas potenciales del uso de la tierra que dependen o fomentan el uso de diferentes políticas de uso.
Yeah, Kurt, that's a good question. I saw that come up, I think, in the chat when the Urban Institute was presenting, and I don't think that we necessarily got an answer. So I can check with Leslie Irwin to see if that's an accessible use of funding. But I think, you know, in the broader scope, anything's on the table, really. Let's, you know, we can certainly discuss what it might look like, but I'll try to get an answer to that quickly from Leslie.
Well, and I can just follow up on that. I was pretty sure Leslie said that the funds could not be used for whatever cost it is to revise your code. So
That's not what I was asking though.
But that's what I was just going to say, Kurt. I feel
Yeah.
like what you're saying is, would we still want to consider those things as recommendations to pair with whatever recommendations we're making for the use of the ARPA funds? But go ahead, and I may not have that right.
Thank you. Yes.
Sí, es una muy buena pregunta que salió con el Instituto Urbano, que no creo que se contestó en su momento. Hay que ver con Leslie Urban para ver si eso es un uso posible de los fondos, que es algo que podemos platicar. Yo entendí que Leslie dijo que no se podían usar los fondos para cubrir costos para revisar códigos. Pero eso no es la pregunta. Kurt está preguntando que si podremos considerar esos como recomendaciones para juntar con los fondos de ARPA.
So that's certainly something that this group can decide upon, if that's something that we want to be doing as well. Kurt, did you have another question?
No, I didn't. I'll raise my hand or lower my hand. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sí, entonces eso sí es algo que podemos decidir si queremos encargarnos de eso también en este grupo. ¿Tenía otra pregunta, Pau? No, eso fue todo. Voy a bajar la pregunta.
Anne Tapp, looks like you have a question.
Yeah,
Comment?
thanks. I know a lot of this work was done prior to the Marshall fires, and I'm wondering if you know, the loss of 1,100 housing units or homes impacts any of our thinking around this, or if it simply just made everything that much worse.
Sí, yo tengo una pregunta aquí, Antap. Entiendo que mucho de ese trabajo se hizo antes de los incendios de Marshall y que si estamos contemplando de cómo afectó la pérdida de 11,000 viviendas o si esto solo hace peor todo el asunto.
One thing I can say is that Paul and I reached out to the city of Louisville, for instance, and asked if they wanted to get more involved in this, but they're overwhelmed, and I believe Superior as well. I don't know if Commissioner Levy would like to say something about this or not, or Paul, if you have something to add.
Sí, Paul y yo platicamos sobre eso y nos contactamos con la ciudad de Louisville y yo creo que Superior también, pero dijeron que estábamos están muy abrumados en este momento. No sé si Comisionada Levy tiene algo que comentar o Paul que agregar.
Thanks. I did unmute myself just you know, to appreciate Anne's concern. You know, we're trying to address really a long-term problem, a problem that has been building for a long time, that COVID just shined a spotlight on. And unfortunately, Marshall's fires will not be the last natural disaster we have. And I'm hopeful that if we do our work well, we will be addressing the kinds of problems that the loss of 1,100 units of housing is creating. But because this is specifically COVID response, I don't think we want to target Louisville or Superior to sit on the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. Gracias, Commissioner Levy. Michael, you have a question? Una pregunta, Michael?
Sure. I was curious if, since rent stabilization types of measures are potentially one avenue of solutions, whether there's room for ARPA funding of say programs that are in the neighborhood of rent control but aren't quite there, such as tax incentives or tax policies, where the goal is to try and take some of the air out of the incentive to raise rents and so stabilize housing in part through tax policies or similar kinds of programs where we're not subsidizing already high rents, but rather we're trying to implement policies that prevent the rents from going up quite so quickly.
Okay, we're going to take a pause for our translation, and we have 2 translations, if you can, to do the commissioner's response as well as Michael's question.
Y yo solo quería abrir mi micrófono para resaltar también ese comentario de Anne, de que eso es un problema de muy largo plazo que lleva muchísimo tiempo en hacerse y que se agravó bastante con COVID, y desafortunadamente esos incendios no van a ser el último desastre natural que tengamos, y espero que si hagamos bien nuestro trabajo podemos ayudar a aliviar el problema que eso está creando, pero ese es específicamente para la respuesta a COVID. Entonces la idea no es enfocarnos solamente más en Louisville o Superior. Y para Michael, para hablar sobre una parte de su solución que sea estabilizar las rentas para ver si hay lugar para utilizar los fondos de ARPA a lugares que no son necesariamente controlados por la renta, pero sí están cerca de ahí, y ayudar a realmente desincentivar pues la idea de seguir subiendo las rentas a través de políticas impositivas o programas similares donde la idea no es estar subsidiando ya rentas que ya están altos, pero promocionar políticas para que se estabilicen.
So the only comment I have, and then we'll see if Paul or anyone else wants to comment, Michael, is that seems like a great question for the greater group. And I'm not sure if we're going to have time in this limited arena to try to dive deeper into those kinds of details, or if we want to wait until our next meeting. So anyways, that's what I have to add at this point.
Y lo que yo quisiera agregar para ver si alguien más quisiera comentar, si esta es una gran pregunta para el grupo completo, aunque tal vez no ahora no sea el momento para ir a detalle, hablar a detalle sobre esto, o si hablamos sobre eso en nuestra siguiente junta.
Yeah, I agree completely, Karen. And I think that one bonus for our next couple of meetings is we will have Leslie with us as far as being able to speak very specifically to policy as we discuss ideas.
Sí, estoy completamente de acuerdo, y yo creo que una ventaja de las siguientes reuniones es que nos va a acompañar Leslie para poder hablar directamente a sus ideas orientadas a las políticas.
Anne-Marie, you have a question? Anne-Marie, ¿tienes una pregunta?
Yes. It's sort of piggybacking what Michael was saying about tax incentives. I think it's buried in here somewhere, but the preservation of existing sort of lower end housing stock, which may not be officially affordable. You know, it may not be that a person 60 to 80% or below of AMI is living there, but how we can preserve smaller units is something that I think is in here. And I actually have been working with some of the families displaced by the fire. And one of the universal issues that comes up is legal assistance, which I think would be also an eviction defense. I know Boulder already has that. And I know there's some limited services through Bridge to Justice, but they're still charging $100 an hour. You know, that's a reduced rate, but low-income people can't really access that. So the whole concept of how we can help people stay in their homes if they have something that works for them, I don't really see that there, but I think it might be implied in some of the categories. So I just want to pull that out as something specific that I think we should work on.
Algo que yo quisiera mencionar referente a lo que dijo Michael, a los incentivos impositivos, es preservar esas casas o viviendas bajo del nivel, tal vez no sean oficialmente asequibles, pero cómo podemos preservar esas unidades más pequeñas. Eso es un punto muy importante. Y por el otro, yo he estado trabajando con las familias desplazados por el incendio y todos necesitan, eso es algo muy universal que está saliendo, es que necesitan defensa jurídica, defensa a la evicción, y aunque hay servicios que están ofreciendo un costo, un descuento, todavía son $100 la hora, que no es algo que pueden pagar personas de bajos ingresos. Y entonces la idea es que si hay personas que tienen una situación que funciona para ellos, para ayudarlos a quedarse ahí.
I agree that it's probably buried in there in the creating sustainable affordable housing. And there's probably a way we can flesh it out more so it's clear.
Estoy de acuerdo que eso sí está algo que esté relacionado tal vez más al fondo, es en esos asuntos de crear más viviendas aquí.
Anna?
Yeah, I picked up from the presentations earlier that one of the focus of the housing bucket, if you will, is providing water and sanitation services. And I don't see that in this list. I think that that's important, especially for manufactured homes. And, you know, maybe it's not top of mind because most people assume that Boulder County, everyone has potable water, but that's not the case. So I wanted to highlight that.
Algo que yo percaté de otras presentaciones que en esa categoría de vivienda es proveer servicios de agua y saneación para todo, y que es especialmente importante para las casas prefabricadas, y que todos aquí tal vez asumimos que todos tienen acceso a agua potable, y eso no necesariamente es el caso.
That's a good point, and it should be called out. Specifically, and probably tied to the manufactured homes and parks. That's a great idea.
Excelente punto. Eso sí es algo que sí debemos de incluir, y tal vez de incluir aquí bajo cerca de ese punto de las casas prefabricadas y parques de casas prefabricadas.
If we don't have any more questions, really our next step, we have about 15 more minutes, a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steph. Sorry.
Hi, sorry, thank you. I just wanted to expand on what Anna said, to say that in the first section, it was really about all types of infrastructure. So that could be for new development of housing. So it's not specific to mobile home parks, although I think that it's a great use of those funds, but let's just make sure that we put it in as broad terms as possible.
Y gracias, Steph. Y solo para hablar más sobre lo que dijo Ana, que en la primera sección tiene que ver con todos tipos de infraestructura, nuevos desarrollos, no específicamente hablando de esos parques de casas móviles, pero para incluirlo en términos generales más amplios.
Okay, I just want to make sure there isn't anything left that needs to be said about that list, if there was anything else that was missing. And if you think about it after this meeting, just go ahead and email us. And Paul, I was thinking, does it make sense to share that whole bucket list with everyone after this meeting? And then other thoughts people have, tweaks they want to make, they could do afterwards?
Si alguien, si no hay nada más que decir sobre esa lista, si luego se les ocurre algo, que falta algo, por favor nos pueden mandar correo. Y no sé si, Paul, si sería buena idea que compartamos esta lista entera con todos después de la reunión y pues nos pueden hacer llegar sus comentarios.
Yes, I think that makes perfect sense, Karen. And I think what we can do is really just start a working document. Can check with Johanna to see if there's a preferred format. But if we start a working document now with these ideas and thoughts, then we can each go in, add comments, start a discussion within that, add our ideas that we may have that are a little bit more specific.
Y eso me suena muy lógico, empezar a hacer un documento de trabajo, no sé cuál sería el formato preferido, pero podemos a partir de ahora crear un documento en que podemos trabajar con estas ideas y pensamientos y todos podemos comentar y estar agregando nuestras ideas.
Absolutely, I can start that document as we're chatting.
Por supuesto, yo de hecho puedo crear este documento en ese momento mientras hablemos.
Thank you, Johanna. Gracias. So I think one thing to do as we're working our way through giving our input is use what we're seeing here now on the screen to guide us these questions.
Y algo que podemos hacer aquí es, mientras estamos haciendo nuestros comentarios, es para utilizar estas preguntas aquí que vemos en la pantalla para guiarnos.
Any thoughts or questions on that, Claire?
Yeah, thanks. It's probably implicit here, but it's one of the most important things is that we have to be able to actually spend all the money by the end of 2026. And I think that is going to be one of the challenges in trying to do any new development that is not on the drawing board already. So it's just something to keep in mind that it's actually a pretty short time frame for developing an affordable housing project. Another concept, and actually, if the translators need me to stop now, I'm happy to wait before I say my other ideas.
Algo aquí que tal vez es implícito aquí es que hay que tener en cuenta que debamos de gastar todo el dinero para finales de 2026 y eso es un reto en un nuevo desarrollo si es un desarrollo que ya no está en el proceso de planificación, que es un tiempo muy corto para desarrollar un proyecto de viviendas asequibles.
Yeah, thanks. And the other criteria is, bang for the buck and really optimizing these funds. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge that some things such as affordable home ownership are inherently expensive. And so I think that will beg a question about whether that as a goal, because it helps address asset building, is worth putting a lot of money into, whereas if we were going towards affordable rentals, we could get more units for the same price.
Did we want to have a translation for that before we go on?
Sorry, I can't take it off mute. Otra criteria aquí que debemos de analizar es estar viendo cómo podemos aprovechar al máximo estos fondos y optimizarlos, y al mismo tiempo también reconocer que algo como un aspecto de tener viviendas asequibles, poder ofrecer personas la posibilidad de tener su propia casa es inherentemente caro. Entonces eso nos lleva a la pregunta que si es como venta, crear patrimonio es realmente vale la pena invertir mucho dinero en eso, o en unidades asequibles de renta donde podemos sacar más unidades para el mismo precio.
So again, really good points. And as we develop our plan going forward, I think that will be something we need to consider. I think Leslie is on this call. And Leslie, if you are, could you just clarify that if money gets put into a certain bucket, so let's say a trust fund or a fund to support home ownership or whatever it's called, and it happens before the due date, is that good enough?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If it happens, but the timeline, the expenditure deadline, is that what the question is?
Yeah, this came up during our bigger group presentation, where the question was, if the money gets appropriated and allocated to a fund, let's say like a land trust fund, by the deadline, is that good enough, even if the land hasn't actually been purchased?
I am doing a little research on that whole concept. I looked in the final rule, and the final rule is absolutely silent on housing trust funds. It does talk about land banking, where you do purchase the land, so you would have that. So I need to get back to you on the eligibility parameters around housing trust funds. As far as you know, home ownership assistance, that could look like a down payment assistance program, and that would need to be obligated in some way, and we would have to discuss what that would be by that December 2024 deadline. But I will provide this group more guidance around the housing trust fund. I'm researching that right now.
Great, thank you. We'll take time now for translation.
Y también, si estamos, la pregunta es que si hay, con esa fecha límite, si aplica, si el dinero está ya designado, por ejemplo, a un fondo de fideicomiso para la fecha, aunque no se haya comprado en los terrenos. Y eso es la pregunta para Leslie. Y Leslie, realmente lo que he visto es que la regla no habla sobre eso exactamente, de los fideicomisos de terrenos. Habla de la compra de tierras, pero también tendremos que ver eso sobre los fondos de fideicomiso para viviendas. Estamos hablando por el otro lado de los programas para un programa de apoyo para pagos de los adelantos para casas, tener una obligación, ya sea de una forma u otra, para septiembre de 2024, pero yo les debo esa sobre los fideicomisos en específico. Voy a estar investigando.
Thank you. I just want to say before we go to our next two comments or questions, we're going to have to figure out our next meeting dates. So I do believe we have time for these two more, but then we're going to have to set our schedule. So I just wanted to make that clear to everyone.
Y si hay un par de comentarios más antes de seguir, solo hay que tener en cuenta que necesitamos fijar nuestras siguientes fechas para reunirnos. Entonces tenemos esos dos, pero luego tenemos que fijar nuestro horario, nuestro programa para reunir.
Thank you. Anne Marie?
So I want to echo that. I think the trust fund question and getting a clear answer to that is really important, because it may give us some time not to have to be as specific and tight with some of our decisions. If we can create a county-wide housing trust fund that then could look at things more slowly, or, you know, not by the deadlines in ARPA. I'm putting in the chat, Michael Anderson is the national guy who does housing trust fund work. He's at the Center for Community Change. I am betting he's worked on an answer to that. And I talked to him early in this ARPA dollars and he didn't have an answer then, but I haven't talked to him lately and I'm hoping that he now has one. But another process, I could pause right there if I need to.
Excelente, Anne-Marie. Yo solo quisiera mencionar que y enfatizar que es muy importante que consigamos una respuesta clara a eso sobre los fideicomisos, porque eso puede ayudarnos a tener un poco más tiempo de no tener que tomar unas decisiones tan específicas y bajo esa presión, con la idea de tal vez crear un fondo a nivel del condado que daría más flexibilidad. Y aquí estoy poniendo en el chat de que es una persona aquí que se llama Michael Anderson, y que en el Centro para el Cambio de Comunitaria, Center for Community Change, quien trabaja en esos tipos de fideicomisos a nivel nacional. Y yo he hablado con él y antes le pregunté sobre eso, no tenía respuesta antes, pero yo espero que ahora sí voy a hablar con él a ver si tiene ya respuesta.
So the couple of other questions I have are procedural questions. And one is sort of, I think in the federal language, they use the term maintenance of effort, but if we have communities like we saw that Longmont has done a lot on affordable housing with its own ARPA dollars, and then we have other communities that may have done nothing, are we going to favor those who put some in of their own money procedurally where they have some matching? And I want us to think about that and how we feel about that. And then the other interesting question that's sort of similar is there certain parts of our community that are more expensive than others? If we, for example, some might say Longmont and Erie are the two least expensive neighborhoods that we've got. Should we put all our affordable housing back to the whole question of the most bang for our buck? If we're going to do land banking, for example, do we do it there where it's the cheapest land? Or do we have a principle of trying to spread affordable housing out around the county? And I could argue it both ways, but I think this group needs to decide what its value is or are as we think about that.
Okay, we'll let that be translated. And you know, I was thinking we had to end by 3:15, but we've got lots of time. It's 3:45, so.
Y aquí tengo una pregunta más de procedimientos. Ahí en términos federales utilizan el término de mantenimiento del esfuerzo. Por ejemplo, allá en Longmont han hecho muchísimo con su dinero de ARPA y hay otras comunidades que no han hecho nada. Y la pregunta aquí es que si vamos a favorecer a esas comunidades que ya han hecho tanto trabajo, y bien por el otro lado hay otras partes de nuestra comunidad que son más caros que otros. Por ejemplo, Longmont y Erie son los más asequibles, y de nuevo ver dónde podemos aprovecharlo al máximo nuestros fondos, ya sea entonces si sería comprar terrenos en estas zonas donde podemos hacer que rinda más el dinero para quedar con las viviendas ahí, o realmente intentar ampliar esas zonas en todo el condado. Entonces sería importante que como grupo podemos decidir cuál es es nuestro valor y nuestra posición en cuanto a eso?
So it's a great statement and comment, and we should take that into consideration. And I think once we figure out how we're moving forward, if we're going into subgroups or how we're going to attack these different buckets, we definitely do want to consider that, Anne Marie. That's a good point.
Muchas gracias, Anne-Marie. Definitivamente necesitamos tomar eso en consideración al avanzar y si estamos dividiéndonos en subgrupos para definitivamente pensar en eso.
Kurt, you had a comment or a question?
I did, thank you. So I wanted to comment to a couple of things Anna Marie mentioned. The first was about the eviction prevention. One of the things that I'll mention is our eviction prevention program in the city actually works in the county courts. And so our staff are challenged with not being able to help people because they don't live in the city of Boulder, but it's the same process. It would be pretty easy and relatively simple to expand that program to cover the county. The infrastructure is already there. However, I'll just add that this is paid for by landlords. They pay $75 a year. It'd be nice to have a better approach than ARPA, I believe. That would be a sustainable funding source similar to that. That we should also consider. And then I have one more. I'll stop there and have one more comment.
Para hablar también sobre lo que mencionó Anne-Marie sobre la prevención de los desalojos. Nuestro programa de prevención de los desalojos trabaja en los tribunales al nivel condado. Entonces, a veces nuestro personal tiene ese reto porque no pueden ayudarlos porque no están en la ciudad de Boulder en sí, pero es el mismo proceso. Entonces, sería relativamente asequible y fácil para expandir ese programa porque ya tenemos la infraestructura. Y quisiera agregar que ese programa se paga por los dueños de las casas, los que rentan a $75 al año. Entonces, sería bueno considerar que tuviéramos una fuente de fondos sostenibles que fuera de ARPA para ese tipo de programa.
The second comment that I wanted to make, I think also related to Anna Marie, is how we spread the funds to different projects around the county. And I would advocate that we spend them, as she mentioned, in areas where we can get more bang for the buck. And like Louisville, Lafayette, well, probably Lafayette, Longmont, Erie, those areas. Or Lyons in Netherlands. And if we put all of our resources into simply supporting affordable housing projects, it would probably support somewhere between 250 and 300 units. So that's the average tax credit project may be as high as 75, let's say. So that's only 4 or 5 projects. And I do believe that for the speed to get the resources spent, I think we actually could purchase land and get the most bang for the buck. Land only goes up in price every year, and taking advantage of these ARPA resources to get land banking is something I think we could accomplish and would be a very good approach.
El segundo comentario también yo creo que está relacionado con el comentario de Anne-Marie, es cómo dividir los fondos a los diferentes proyectos en todo el condado. Yo sí apoyaría gastar el dinero en las zonas donde podemos hacer rendir más el dinero para el costo de terrenos, por ejemplo, Louisville, Erie, Lafayette, Lyons, Netherlands. Si nosotros invertimos los recursos en apoyar a los proyectos de vivienda vivienda asequible. So, podría salir en unos 4 o 5 proyectos que tendrían unos 200 hasta 300 unidades. Y para eso ayudaría también a hacer que podamos hacer esa inversión en los terrenos para poder gastar el dinero antes de las fechas límites, para realmente también por el otro lado aprovechar los costos actuales de los terrenos, ya que todos los años sigue subiendo los costos.
Thank you, Kurt. Michael, did you have another question or a comment?
Yeah, I was curious just about the what Kurt was saying, and was hoping to identify another way of spending money on creating, well, not exactly creating funding, affordable housing, but securing it, and that would be through something similar to what we were doing with the mobile home park, and I'm thinking Steph could speak to this as well. But using money in ways where we would be purchasing existing rental units through a combination of part grant money and loan money, and then possibly using the setting up the loan money as a revolving fund, and then that would feed, payment into that, repayment of that fund would feed money back into the fund. And it just strikes me that that's a way of stretching the dollars a lot further. So the idea was you'd buy up rental housing, partly with a grant just to get the mortgage costs down, and then basically having the renters support the rest of the purchase cost. And that way, it just seems like you could acquire a lot more affordable units.
If you're translating, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Yo también tengo curiosidad de lo que dijo Kurt y me gustaría identificar otra forma de crear fondos, asegurar fondos para unidades de vivienda asequible, y eso sería algo similar a lo que estamos haciendo en los parques de las casas móviles. Sería utilizar los fondos en alguna forma donde compramos unidades existentes de renta utilizando una combinación de dineros de los bonos y préstamos, y utilizar el dinero de los préstamos como un fondo revolvente para que se regrese dinero a ese fondo para que alcance más el dinero. Por ejemplo, la idea de comprar casas de renta parcialmente con un bono para bajar el costo de la hipoteca, y luego los rentistas apoyan lo demás parte del costo de compra. Entonces, eso no permitiría adquirir más unidades.
Before I call on Stefka to reply, I just want to say one of my intentions that Paul and I talked about is that after this conversation, we're going to just take a pause. And if there's anybody who hasn't spoken yet today and really would like to contribute, we're going to offer you that time. So Stefka, would you like to respond to Michael's suggestion?
Y Steph, con lo que la intención de Paul y yo quisiera solamente mencionar que después de eso vamos a tomar una pausa y ver si hay alguien que no ha hablado, y le vamos a abrir el espacio. Entonces, Steph, quisiera hablar.
Great. And I think it's a really interesting idea. I'm seeing what's happening in the chat too, where Anne-Marie kind of chimed in saying that it is still unclear at the state level whether that revolving loan fund is actually something that can actually be used under ARPA. I see you said that they're saying it can't be, but I thought that it was still in question, but I am not sure about that. I would also like to know on the idea of the bullet point we talked about earlier, revolving leveraging existing funds, that it would be really helpful, and this could be like an interim homework piece or something, for everyone to talk about ways that things they're already doing that need a final piece, or like we just did receive funding from the state, from the AHIF funds that is specific around BIPOC homeownership rates. And so things like that are already happening, I would like some to kind of know an inventory, if you will, of what's going on so that we know what's out there to leverage. So that's one thing. And on the front of what is ARPA eligible or not, does anyone know, or can we put a question out as to how the local government funds can be layered or not with the statewide funds?
Y para una idea interesante aquí que estoy viendo, y creo que los comentarios también de Anne-Marie en el chat, de que todavía no está claro si al nivel estatal, que si esos fondos revolventes de créditos es algo que se puede utilizar bajo ARPA, y aunque no sé si haya resuelto eso o no. Y bajo el punto que tienen ahí sobre aprovechar al máximo los fondos existentes, no sé si es algo que podríamos hacer como tarea después de esta reunión, es para hacer como un tipo inventario sobre los proyectos que ya están en curso, que necesitan una pieza final, un empujón final. Entonces, por ejemplo, nosotros recibimos fondos del Estado para personas BIPOC, para tener sus casas. Entonces, cosas como esas que podemos saber qué programas podríamos aprovechar, y también por el otro lado, en cuanto a lo que es elegible bajo ARPA o no, no sé si alguien sabe cómo se pueden combinar esos fondos del gobierno, esos fondos de ARPA con los estatales.
Thank you. So we're going to go to Kurt. I believe it's related to this conversation, and then to Leslie. And then we're going to hold the space for people who haven't had a chance yet to talk, who may have something they want to share today. So Kurt?
That's correct. I'll be very, very quick. So what Michael described is a very good approach that is sort of figured out as far as buying existing market rate apartments or units and putting them into affordable housing. And it leverages the money by probably 4 or 5 to 1. So if we put in $1 million of ARPA fund into purchasing a apartment building, it would be matched by $4 or $5 million. That's a very effective, and I think it could be a timely way of using these funds in different communities.
Thank you.
Brevemente, lo que mencionó Michael es una muy buena idea que ya está comprobado, de comprobar esas unidades del mercado y agregarlo al mercado de vivienda asequible. Y, por ejemplo, si utilizáramos $1 millón para comprar una unidad de departamentos, eso sería agregado a esos fondos $4 o $5 millones que hace rendir el dinero, y es algo muy eficaz y en tiempo que podríamos usar esos fondos.
Leslie?
I just wanted to pop back in with some answers. I looked at the final rule. The final rule is the Treasury document that the final rule came out in January, and that's really what we look to for absolute answers. It's super wonky regulatory language, but housing trust funds are not eligible. There was a public comment question about making economic development corporations, et cetera, considered obligated when you set that up. and so that you could extend the expenditure timeline, and Treasury says no and refers back to the expense has to be incurred, meaning obligated, by December 31st, 2024. So that's a no. And on land banking, I just need to let you know there are specific parameters in Treasury guidance around land banking. It is eligible, you could purchase the land, and there are parameters around that that I'd be happy to provide to this group. Third is revolving loan fund, and we can do that. The first loan, though, has to be made by that deadline of December 2024, and then Treasury has parameters on how we treat repayment of principal and interest, and if a loan doesn't mature by 2026, how we calculate repayment beyond that date. So it gets a little complicated, but yes, it's eligible. And I'll pause there for interpreting.
Solo si quisiera darles unas respuestas de las preguntas, dudas que tuvimos aquí. Entonces, básicamente aquí estoy refiriendo a ese documento de la tesorería de enero que da las respuestas absolutas. Es un lenguaje bastante regulatorio, pero en total dice que los fideicomisos para viviendas no son elegibles. Había un comentario público sobre esos cooperativos de desarrollo y la respuesta es no, que se debe de incurrir el gasto a más tardar para esa fecha límite del 21 de diciembre de 2026. En cuanto a la compra de tierras, del banco de tierras, de terrenos, se puede comprar los terrenos, pero hay reglamentos que aplican sobre eso que les puedo explicar. Y en cuanto a los fondos de créditos revolventes, y eso sí se puede hacer, pero el primer crédito se debe de otorgar por la fecha límite del diciembre de 2024, y también hay parámetros que regulan cómo se manejan los intereses y principal y calcular el repago de créditos que exceden esa fecha del 2026.
And you just got a shout out. Thank you for interpreting.
Excellent job.
About what a great job you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Before we talk about our next meeting time and our next steps, we just want to make sure that for some of you who've been doing such a great job of listening, if there's something that you want to add to the conversation, and if so, just go ahead and raise your hand.
Y sí, ahora sí quisiéramos abrir el espacio para gente que no hayan comentado nada. Por favor, si pueden levantar la mano para hacernos llegar sus comentarios.
Anne?
Well, thanks. I'll defer to Laura because I love Laura's question. I have a different one, but if Laura, you want to go ahead and go.
Voy a referir primero a la pregunta de Laura. Yo tengo otra pregunta, pero ella tiene una muy buena pregunta.
Thank you, Anne. So the question was, there are already established mechanisms within the county and city, and I'm sure all the other municipalities in the county for distribution of funds. So would that count as not establishing a new trust, but using an already established mechanism for distribution of money, elongate or extend the timeline? So that's one question, and I wanted to speak to our ideas on pipeline, and as somebody who actually does some of this work, what we've got going on, and yeah. I'll pause for translation and you might be.
We can't hear you if you're translating.
Otra forma aquí de aprovechar, mi duda es si podríamos en vez de utilizar un fondo, hacer un nuevo fideicomiso, pero en vez de eso, utilizar los programas existentes para poder tal vez alargar un poquito esa fecha límite que estamos hablando y en cuanto a la prohibición a los fideicomisos. Y por el otro lado, quisiera hablar sobre los proyectos que tenemos en curso ya planeados.
And Leslie, that's a great question. And I think it is, you can put ARPA funds in an existing mechanism, although Leslie has left the meeting, so we could double check with her. Unless Claire, do you know the answer to that question? No.
Second thing I wanted to mention is as the housing authority in the city, you know, we do all of these things that have been talked about already today. And I will pile on with what Kurt was saying in terms of timeline is that, and Claire as well, is that it's going to be tough to spend on new initiatives or new projects that are not already in either an entitlement pipeline or even in a twinkle in the eye in terms of a purchase of land, because the due diligence that it takes to actually purchase things does take a bit of time. But I think that it's doable to expend if we need to on things that are already in the works. And BHP, for example, has quite a robust pipeline of land that we can start developing, perhaps in an accelerated manner. And I wouldn't want to speak for other entities in the community, but as we saw with Longmont, and I know with Boulder County as well, Paul, I won't speak for you, but of course I know that Nori has quite a bit that she's working on too. So last point with that is investment in community asset through public entities will give back to the communities down the road as well. And so just to keep that in mind as we're thinking about where and how to prioritize those funds. Thank you. And I'm going to have to hop off camera and get on my phone, so you won't see me, but I will be here. Thanks.
Excelente. Voy a apagar un poco mi cámara porque tengo que tomar una llamada. Y por la segunda que quería mencionar es como autoridad aquí de viviendas, hacemos todas estas cosas que estamos hablando el día de hoy y realmente también agregar a lo que dijo Claire y creo que otra persona, que va a ser muy difícil gastar en proyectos que ya no están en proceso ya de planificación debido a que el proceso de debida diligencia realmente tarda bastante tiempo, pero creo que sí es mucho más factible gastar en proyectos que ya están en pie. Por ejemplo, aquí tenemos una lista de proyectos bastante robustos de terrenos que podemos empezar a desarrollar de manera más acelerada. Y, por ejemplo, como vimos con Boulder y Longmont, hay muchos proyectos que ya están en pie. Entonces, también tener eso en cuenta y que la inversión en la comunidad, las propiedades comunitarias a través de entidades públicas, eso va a ser una inversión a largo plazo para las comunidades a futuro. Entonces, hay que tener eso en cuenta mientras estamos pensando en cómo priorizar los fondos.
Thank you. So we're going to go to Anne, then to Claire, and then we're going to talk about our meeting schedule and next steps.
Thanks, Karen. I had kind of a different topic. So Claire, I wasn't sure if you were going to respond to Laura's question.
No, I was going to, although my comment does piggyback, Anne, if you wouldn't mind me jumping in here. Thank you. And I'll be quick. I raised my hand to make this comment and Laura sort of addressed it, but I think what we don't have on the list is investing in projects that are in the pipeline for the purpose of speeding up their development or allowing deeper affordability. And that is another way to leverage funds here, where we can use this, invest in something that maybe was going to be affordable at 60% of AMI and allow affordability as low as 30% of AMI.
Y yo creo que Laura mencionó esos comentarios, pero lo que falta de nuestra lista es la inversión en proyectos que ya están pensados, ya están en pie. Si podemos utilizar esos proyectos para o acelerar su desarrollo o hacerlos aún más asequibles, es una otra forma de más aprovechar al máximo los fondos. Invertir, por ejemplo, en algo que está planeado a una asequibilidad de 60% y que lo podremos bajar a 30%.
Anne, do you want to go now?
Yes, thank you. So kind of switching gears a little bit, I'm also thinking about the need to invest in kind of pre-housing support. And obviously we work with a number of families that find themselves homeless because of domestic violence. And I know Anna works with families who are experiencing homelessness or on the verge of homelessness because of a lot of different reasons. And so my concern is that a lot of these resources really leave out people who are already housing unstable or experiencing homelessness and are just kind of on the sort of the waiting platform. And I know that there have been conversations in the past about a family homeless shelter, and I personally don't believe that that's the direction to go, but we've been in conversations with a number of our community partners about the need for like a hoteling program or something that recognizes that the goal is to get people into housing, and there are a number of folks and largely very marginalized community members that aren't there yet. And I would just want to make sure that we're not losing track of those folks and the need to create some sort of readiness support.
Y yo quisiera mencionar que hay una necesidad para apoyo para previvienda. Nosotros trabajamos con familias que no tienen vivienda debido a violencia doméstica o personas que no tienen viviendas o están muy cerca de perder su vivienda. Entonces, mi preocupación que eso excluya a las personas que tienen situaciones de vivienda inestables o no tienen vivienda o están en una plataforma, por ejemplo, de espera. Nosotros habíamos hablado de un albergue familiar para personas sin vivienda, aunque no necesariamente creo que eso es la mejor opción. Pero sería bueno tener algún programa que reconoce que la meta aquí es hacer que las personas tienen sus viviendas y que tenemos a esos miembros de la comunidad que están marginalizados y hay que tenerlos en cuenta y tener apoyo disponible para ellos.
Thank you, Anne. It's another great topic that we should be thinking of as well. So I don't know, Johanna, if you want to lead this conversation about when our next meeting is, or did you want me or Paul to do that?
I'm happy to. And I'll pause in a moment, but just going to go into setting our next 2 meeting times, one for the week beginning March 14th, and the next will be the week beginning March 28th.
Y un excelente tema en que pensar, muchas gracias. Y Joana, que vamos a pasar a hablar sobre cuándo vamos a programar nuestras siguientes reuniones. Hablando de eso, vamos a fijar esas 2 reuniones, uno para la semana del 14 de marzo y otro para el 28, la semana del 28 de marzo.
So I think the easiest way to go about this is we have 2 days and times of the week on the table. One is Tuesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. The other time is Wednesdays, 8 to 10 a.m.
Creo que la forma más fácil de hacerlo es dar 2 ventanas o 2 espacios de tiempo. Uno sería los martes de 3 a 5 de la tarde y otro de el miércoles de 8 a 10 de la mañana.
So I'm going to put I'll put those in the chat so you can also see them. And then I think the easiest way to go about this is just everyone, please respond Tuesday or Wednesday. And we're just going to go for the one that we can get the most people to participate in.
Is this going to be a permanent time period, or would it be just for those 2 weeks that you mentioned?
Just those 2 weeks. So it is Tuesday, let's see, Tuesday, March 15th, 3 to 5 p.m. or Wednesday, March 16th from 8 to 10 a.m. That's the first week that you'll have your next working group meeting. And then the second week that everyone will be meeting is the week of the 28th. So that's Tuesday, March 29th, 3 to 5 p.m. or Wednesday, March 30th, 8 to 10 a.m.
And does it have to be the same day for both times?
Doesn't necessarily have to be, just by means of convenience. It's usually easier for people, but if we have to do a Tuesday and a Wednesday thing, I imagine Paul and Karen, you can make a decision on that.
Entonces yo voy a poner aquí en el chat para decidir ya que sea ese martes o miércoles y si pueden responder y que tiene más votos, vamos a escoger esa fecha. Entonces eso sería el martes 15 de marzo de 3 a 5 de la tarde o el miércoles 16 de marzo de 8 a 10 de la mañana. Eso el primero sería nuestra primera semana de la junta del grupo de trabajo. La segunda sería una reunión entre todas, que es la semana del 28, que sería el martes 28 de marzo de 3 a 5 de la tarde o el miércoles 30 de marzo de 8 a 10 por la mañana. Y no es obligatorio que sea necesariamente todos los martes o todos los miércoles, pero aunque eso sea más fácil en general para todos, Paul, y pueden decidir eso.
What I'm seeing is Tuesday is overwhelmingly the preferred date. There are some people who can do either. I have not seen anyone who could only do Wednesday. Is that correct?
That's
You
what I'm
can
seeing.
correct me in the chat, or Paul, if you've seen something different.
No, that's what I'm seeing. Exactly what you just stated.
Great. I will send out after this meeting the calendar invitation for those meetings.
Y entonces, al parecer, por mayoría, la fecha preferida es el martes. Y ahí, entonces, vamos a mandar esa invitación del calendario después de esta reunión.
Anna, did you have something about the schedule?
Yeah, I was gonna propose that maybe given the short time frame for this work, that we go ahead and try to set up the schedule like as far as we can so that people can start blocking that off, because otherwise we'll all start having conflict. So that's just a proposal.
I think we're settling on Tuesdays 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm. And to clarify, so there are only 2 more working group meetings. They are going to be occurring every other week, and you will be able to communicate on these issues in between. If you would like me to help set up a platform for you to communicate on, either Slack or if there's something else that you prefer, happy to do that.
Y entonces, al parecer, la idea, si quisiera pedir, Ana, yo que si podemos agendar entre más número de juntas posible ahorita a futuro para que no se ocupe la gente y ya no pueden ir. Pero parece que ya vamos a estar, escogimos los martes de 3 a 5 y solamente hay que tener en cuenta, solo faltan 2 reuniones del grupo de trabajo, aunque también, por favor, tengan en cuenta que van a poder comunicarse entre ustedes entre las reuniones y con gusto yo puedo organizar una forma de comunicar, ya sea Slack o otro método preferido para facilitar eso.
Johanna, we don't have to go out of this room, right? This is where everybody's going to be joining us again, so we're good?
Correct.
Okay, good. And Sefka, I was just going to talk about next steps. And one is we talked about sharing the bucket list, which I think the link was shared in the chat, although Johanna can send it to everybody. And then you had suggested a homework project where we all kind of look at what's in the pipeline and could just need some extra support. And so I'm not sure how we'd like to do that. Maybe Johanna, you could set up a document that we could populate.
Y entonces nosotros no tenemos que salir de esa llamada de Zoom. Y en cuanto a los próximos pasos, sería que hablamos de compartir esa lista de las categorías, ya está en el chat, pero Janak también lo puede mandar a todos. Y la otra próximo paso fue la sugerencia de esa tarea de analizar los proyectos que ya están en pie, que podemos darles un apoyo extra.
Yes, so on the document that I pasted some of those slides, we can add on there. And I think that would be an easy place to share thoughts and ideas. And then Sophia will also be sharing the meeting notes from today that will have some action items and next steps that need to be taken. So we can put a note in there. Karen and Paul, I can speak with you after about what specific action items we want to include.
Okay, and I do need to pop off at 4:15 or 4:30 at the latest, so we can follow up one way or another. So it looks like more people are joining us. Are we closing our meeting now, Johanna? Does that make sense? And Paul?
I think so. Yeah, I think we're just going to welcome everyone back.
Could I just ask, instead of doing what everyone is aware of, we could do a formal survey of all the local governments to make sure we don't miss any pipeline projects that some of us might not know about.
I think that's a group decision. Paul, your thoughts? Oh, we can't hear you, Paul.
Sorry. I said, yeah, that would work for me.
So who would do that? Oh, Kurt says he can do it. That'd be awesome, Kurt.
Yeah, the Regional Housing Partnership has connections with every municipality, and we can put that together.
And Kurt, I can assist as needed for sure.
I was going to assign it to you, Paul.
Sounds good. That'll work for me. That's the way it goes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for a very rich conversation.
This is Amy. We just finished our mental